Well, hi, I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich, and I'd like to talk to you about leadership and engineering. Hey, in this short video, I'd like to ask you this question. Are leaders born or are they made? Now, if you look at the literature for leadership, all the research done on organizational leadership and leadership in general, this is a question, and it used to be that people thought about leadership from the perspective of you're born with it. So just like my eyes are brown, maybe you are a leader, maybe you aren't a leader. So it's this idea that it's a trait. And so in that case, you're sort of always on the lookout for leaders. Abraham Lincoln, now there's a leader. Gandhi, now there's a leader, and so on. And then, the ideas in the organization, you're kind of on this never-ending quest to find leaders you can bring in. Now, what happened in the organizational leadership literature, maybe starting around the 50s or 60s, is people started to realize, wait a minute, leadership probably should not be thought of as a trait. It should be thought of as a process. So in broad sweeping terms, you have really two theories on leadership. You have one, it's a trait, and the other, it's a process. And so the idea of a process is that leadership is something that exists between the leader and the follower and very much involves the context. So let's think about this in practice. So let's suppose we say that leadership is a trait, right? Okay, so you have Bob. Bob's the president of a corporation, and we say Bob is a natural leader, and leadership is a trait. Well, if it's really only about Bob, then if we say to Bob, listen, at church this Sunday, we want you to teach the kindergarten class, then if it only depends on Bob, he should be able to just as effectively teach the kindergartners as he runs his corporation, or he should be able to run a cheerleading squad or a professional football team or a bunch of soldiers or whatnot. But you see my point. I mean, it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that the trait theory of leadership is a ridiculous oversimplification. It isn't that leadership resides in the person alone. It involves the follower, and it involves the context. So we would say then that leadership is a process. And the great thing about leadership as a process is once you say that, then you start to realize things like, wait a minute, if it's not like brown eyes, I mean, if you don't have brown eyes, and you just, I guess you could wear contacts, to kind of fake having brown eyes or have some crazy surgery. But by and large, if it's a trait, you're kind of stuck, right? You're like, well, I can't ever be a guy with brown eyes. And if leadership's a trait, you're just kind of stuck if you don't have it. But then we start to realize trait is something that or leadership is something that can be learned. It's a process. And then all of a sudden we get in our mind that as a leader, not only, we want to develop ourselves, we want to develop ourselves into the best leaders we can, because remember, it's not a trait. It's not like, well, I have brown eyes, I'm done. It's something that we've learned and we can learn to be better at. And all of a sudden we see that we need to be developing ourselves. A leader who isn't trying to deliberately improve his own leadership skills is a naive leader. And the other thing you realize is that we need to develop other leaders. And I'd go as far as say, if you're a leader and you're not developing other leaders around you, you're really missing an important component. So, look around your organization. What leaders have you raised up? And if the answer is none, then I'm really going to question the effectiveness of your leadership. And at any rate, so leadership is a process. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't some sort of born with it kind of component, because you think about Michael Jordan as a basketball player, the truth is Jordan worked very, very hard, and he practiced relentlessly even as a small child, and he got good, and but the truth is, even if you work as hard as Michael Jordan, you're probably going to not be as good of a basketball player as he is, because there is some element of, well, he's Michael Jordan. So there is clearly some aspect which is, you're given a certain amount. But the real question is not, did you get as much basketball talent as Jordan, if you're playing on a high school team, the real question is, are you meeting your own potential? And as a leader, it's the same thing, okay? You may not be Abraham Lincoln, but in the context you're in, are you being the best leader you can be? That's the right question. So it's all about developing yourself, and it's about helping leaders around you develop into the best leaders they can be. And at any rate, that's pretty much the state of modern leadership theory, is that, there is some value in thinking about the traits of leaders, but by and large, the majority of your effort is devoted to thinking about this simple question, two simple questions, how do I develop myself as a leader, and how do I develop others as leaders? Because leadership is a process, not a trait. At any rate, I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.